focus on hitting your goals in every area of your business. Remember, the universe rewards the bold. A leader has to take the risks. I'm excited about hanging out and having a conversation. Where are you from, man?
Originally from South Carolina, but living in Atlanta. I guess we've been here for about 15, 16 years now.
Oh, so, nice.
Yeah. Okay. So it's home now, I guess.
Okay. And so as far as like, I mean, you being in the type of business that you're in, have you been doing that for a long time?
Well, funny enough, I was working in the corporate world, right? I started off kind of the same story you hear a lot of entrepreneurs or business owners kind of take, and was doing that for about 12 years in sales, and most of the time it was within sales, and then kind of got into marketing the last 5 years of the corporate side of things. And about 5.5, 6 years ago, just decided like I wanted more, and had my first child where she was born, and it kind of sparked me where she was born with a birth defect. And it was at that moment that I was working 6, 7 days a week and traveling and commuting a couple hours in the car. Obviously, Atlanta, you don't get anywhere fast. My wife was working full time, and I just came to the conclusion, like, there's more to this. This can't be what it's all about. And I didn't know how much time we would need and flexibility. So decided to kind of jump ship and put in my notice. And originally was starting off as a fractional sales manager for small businesses. That lasted about 60 days whenever I started to really get into and understand where the needs were, right? And that's what kind of got me and pivoted things into more of the digital side, the online, and that's kind of what sparked this and where it's gone today. So not necessarily specifically in it, but in a roundabout way.
Well, I think we're going to get along just good, because I agree with you. Corporate America sucks. So we are on the same page here, man. And I'm so happy that you joined us on Wealth on the Beach podcast. And just so everybody knows, we're talking with Brandon Cockrell, and he is the owner of Linchpin Sales Interactive. And it's actually linchpinsale.com if you want to check them out. And I love how they say, we find customers and buyers so you don't have to. And they say, we are marketing experts focused on driving actual results. And so that is like the dream of every business person. Yep. So tell us, how'd you come up with that little saying? And is it, true or is it bullshit?
Yeah, no, great question. I don't think a lot of people ask that question enough, right? And look, the story, and it kind of starts with the story behind the name Linchpin, right? And you can probably see right over my shoulder here, Seth Godin's book, Linchpin. It was something I read whenever I was in the corporate world towards the end there. And it really drives home the point of, are you that piece of the puzzle? Are you that person or that tool, so to speak, which, your traditional linchpin tool is, but that if they were to remove you, everything would crumble around it. And are you that invaluable? Is that what you are? And so whenever I was looking and starting the business, obviously the domain was available. So that was huge, right? Like we needed that. But it was really about, I wanted to have a brand. And whenever people looked at our brand, they knew wasn't necessarily, hey, we're going to turn you into millionaires overnight or anything like that. But they knew they were going to be able to rely on us, and that we were going to become that pivotal piece in their business that helped them get from where they are today to where they want to go. And that's really, at the end of the day, all we're looking to accomplish. And why I can tell you it's not bullshit is because, starting off early on, obviously we had to build it, and I started off just myself, had to figure things out. But a big part of that was I had to get pretty aggressive whenever it came to our offerings. We didn't have a customer base. This wasn't what I did in the corporate world. My wife was working in marketing and in digital for a corporation at that time. She now works full time in the business with me and the rest of our team. But it was at that point whenever I realized that we needed to be different. And so we started working primarily on a performance base. And that meant, in a lot of ways, we had to figure things out for our clients in order for us to get paid. And it was a true performance base. And so that's how we got the doors to start being opened with opportunities and businesses. And so we had to go out and figure out and work on whether that was social marketing, whether that was search, whether that was conversion rate optimization and building out websites and sales pages, whether that was the back end, meaning follow-up campaigns with email and flows and text, whatever we could do to drive profitability for the client, because that was the only way we were going to get paid. And at the time, it was a stretch, but we were really good because we give a shit. Like, we honestly are sitting there looking at it, and we take everybody, regardless of where they're at in their journey. There's an option and there's a strategy. And I know that because I've done it personally. We still practice what we preach. So we know what works and what doesn't. I know how hard it's going to be. I know what to tell you to expect and the expectations, which is a large part of that. But kind of started off that way, where we had to hunt and we had to cook and we had to clean. And whenever you start off that way, you start designing and building a team that is set up to handle essentially anything. But at the end of the day, it's all about getting that result. And if we don't think it's there, then we're going to tell you that up front as well, because we know what to look for.
Well, that's powerful, because I mean, there's a lot of people out there that say that they'll get you results, or they can make big promises and then you never hear back from them. And, there's a lot of people that don't really give a shit. And so that might be a separator for you and most. And so let's kind of like, really step back and maybe get you to answer the question that I think everybody needs this answer. And I know you know the answer, and that's really marketing, right? I mean, you have all of these self-employed people, all these independent contractors, all these people selling, whether it be insurance or investments or real estate or some multi-level business or product or a car salesperson, whatever. We all have one thing in common, man. If we don't have clients, we don't make money. So exactly. if you don't have any eyeballs, you don't make money. And that's why so many of these people fail, in my opinion. Most fail in most of these businesses that I just talked about, because they don't have any eyeballs. Nobody knows who they are. And they don't realize that, like, we're in kind of a different world now. We're not back in 1990. This is 2020, which means everybody has the internet. People are scrolling every single day. It's almost like your phone. You ever sat down your phone and then you walked away from it and then you checked your pocket and you're like, oh shit, where's my brain? You know what I mean? Like, yep. Like literally Absolutely. Our phone is like a connection of our body now. It's the weirdest thing. And yep. So why do we need to market? Please just tell these people why they need to market.
Well, I mean, people got to know that you exist. That's the very first step, right? Like, and if they don't know you exist, if they're not aware of the solution that you can provide, because there are people out there looking. And what you were saying is that, yes, we are tied to the hip with our phones. And now we have the opportunity to meet those people exactly where they are, where, 20, 30, 40 years ago, all you could do, and this is, one thing that is a huge topic of conversation with a lot of businesses and brands that I speak with and work with, is that back then, yes, you had to go through the market research. You had to do test groups. You had to go through and try to get as much as you possibly can right, because you really only had one shot. You had to go out, you're spending millions of dollars to get on a TV commercial, radio, billboard, any type of traditional means. It wasn't cheap. You had to figure things out, and you kind of had that one shot. And if it bombed, well, you just kind of had to move on, and unfortunately it didn't work out. Now we have the ability, and everybody has the ability, to get in front of people that are looking for what it is they have to offer, that are able to relate with the person on the other side of the phone screen. And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize. And one thing that I have realized, because I have gone through it myself, like I said, and that's one of the most powerful things is that I can look at it and I can say, yes, that probably isn't going to work that well, or yes, that is going to work very well. But the biggest thing is just not to overthink it, because at the end of the day, it's just about putting your message out there, and it's the same stuff that has worked for decades, if not centuries, right? The more people see your brand, the more often, the more places they see it, the more they're going to start to trust it, the more they're going to build a relationship with it. And our phone having the ability to connect with people directly where they're at, people that are looking specifically for what it is you have to offer, it creates an opportunity that, yeah, we've never seen before. But I think a lot of people still don't quite realize how powerful it is by just getting
why do you think that? Why do you think that, Brandon? Why are people so resistant to building a brand, like really creating that? And we'll talk a little bit more about the fame formula, right? Why are people so resistant?
I think it's traditional. I think, look, I think we're in a bit of the middle of a generational shift, right? Like you're starting, and I'm at the very end of millennial generation, right? So I came through, and whenever I started off, like I was cold calling, knocking on doors, 95-degree weather in suits, and getting kicked out of places and all that. And that's how I had to go out and generate business. And then over the years, as things progressed, curiosity lends myself, because I didn't want to have to rely solely on cold calling and networking and all this other stuff. One, I hated it. I don't like it. But I was like, if I want to grow, I have to be able to expand my message and really kind of multiply myself. How do I get out in front of more people? And that's whenever I really started working on getting in front of my phone and just practicing camera work and just kind of getting comfortable talking into a small hole. And I think a lot of people still have that traditional mindset of, and they do, I know this for a fact, because most people that I talk to, it's all about, they overthink it. It's perfectionism. It's paralysis by analysis. It's all of those things that stop them before they start. And they get worried that, well, I'm going to go out, I'm going to shoot this video, and maybe they want to run an ad with it, whatever, they're trying to do. You don't necessarily have to do that. You can just get yourself out in front of the camera and get it out in front of people. The algorithms are going to help you a lot. But at the end of the day, they're thinking about, well, what if I post this and it doesn't work? And they'll give it 48 hours to work. And I challenge everybody to flip that thinking. Like that is not the way in today's world. It's the quicker that you post it and get it out there, the faster and the more close you're going to be to getting it right. And it is not going to work early on. It's most likely you're not going to get anything from that first one, but you may learn this message worked very good. This got more engagement. Then you start building on top of that. And that's what marketing is just watching the data, testing, putting yourself out there. And if you just start, you'll start realizing that it's not. Authenticity wins. And I think over the next 5-10 years, trust and authenticity is going to be the number one driving factor of what people do business with. And I think it's going to really drive whether or not you're going to be set up for long-term success or not.
Well, you say authenticity. What does that mean? If somebody's just sitting there listening or watching, what exactly does that mean, authenticity?
Being yourself, obviously, is the easy answer. That's kind of the low-hanging fruit answer. But, being able to show people a little bit behind the scenes, being able to allow people in to what is happening when they may not be working with you, or allowing them to see what your true feelings or thoughts or how you talk and how you respond and have conversations, and being transparent, and not being afraid of that. Because there's one thing, obviously, whenever you start doing this, you're going to realize that there's a lot of people that think the way you do and like what you say and wish that they could do the same. And you'll see that. However, you're also going to see that there's a lot of people out there that it doesn't matter what you say, they're not going to like it. And you have to expect that and be okay with that. But there's nothing wrong with that. That's always been the way of the world. It's just now you have the ability fortunately and unfortunately, to get that direct feedback. And that becomes part of that process as well. But you have to be able to just put yourself out there and show and let people see that, look, I'm not polished. I'm not some person. I tell people all the time, like, I'm never going to guarantee you that this ad campaign is going to make you a millionaire overnight. I'm never going to guarantee that. But what I will guarantee you is that we're going to bust our ass and we're going to be as committed as you are to making sure that everything is working at the highest levels possible. We will be right there to help you identify where the bottlenecks are so that we eventually get there. I don't know if that's going to happen in a week, a month, or a year, but we're going to be right there and you're going to trust us. And that's what we can control. So that
Powerful.
type of authenticity is really what I'm referring to. And people see it if you start putting yourself out there.
Hey, man, I mean, you're right on. I mean, everything you're saying is exactly what I've been preaching for a very, very long time to all of, I mean, I run a financial services organization. We have 1,500 licensed agents, 50 locations, and we, you know, it's like, I just don't get it. I mean, it's so easy to me these days. Yeah. It's so easy to meet new people. And this is what's cool about today's world, is that when I meet somebody, it's usually because they think like me. Because the people that don't think like me, they've already unfollowed me. You know what I mean? They've already went right past that ad. And by the way, they probably never even saw my ad, the people that don't like me, because the ads are, you know, somewhat targeted. I know it's not. Maybe you could kind of explain what's happening in the world of marketing and ads and why you can't guarantee, because probably 3-4 years ago, you could more or less guarantee things that you can't guarantee. But the point I'm trying to make is that, man, I mean, how nice is it that, you know, there's built-in algorithms in social media that say, look, you don't like this person, you can block them. You can just unfollow them and you'll never get stuff from that person again. Matter of fact, I've actually clicked on ads and it'll say, don't ever show me that ad again, because I've already seen it, or I already bought the product already, or whatever. And so how awesome is that?
Yeah. I mean, and look, it's that education as well, you know, and I think that's where, if you're a marketing company, because we preach, obviously, content is everything. I'm a big fan of video. You know, face-to-face is always going to win as long as it's just humans around. Like we're going to naturally just get bought in and trust 10 times easier if we're sitting face-to-face somebody. However, video is right behind that. You know, and podcast is really jumping up the audio side of that as well. But video allows people, there's so many people out there that, and I'm sure you've got this with your base, people that feel like they know you, people that would send you thousands or hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands or $1 million without having met you in person, because they have seen you on video so much, because that builds that trust and that relationship. And then it just becomes about continuing to stay in front of them. And that's whenever you start getting into some of the other things that we talk about around, like the fame formula and things of that nature. But, you know, it's all about staying in front and staying top of mind. And yes, you need to be prepared that if somebody comments something or that's normal, and just block and move on. And you know what, you don't have to deal with it again. And you're also telling the algorithm at that point, you know, people that kind of look like this from a habit, interest, all that, you probably don't want to send it to them, because they're not going to be happy. At the end of the day, the algorithms just want people to stay on their platform as long as possible. So if they pick up that certain demographics aren't necessarily liking what they're seeing, they're going to stop showing it to that specific segment. Sometimes it doesn't happen immediately, but it does. That's what it picks up on. And so the more consistent, the longer you do it, the smarter it gets. And, you know, and that's important to know. But yeah, you're spot on.
Tell me about kind of, there has been changes though, and maybe how are you guys dealing with those changes? Because I've even known, I've even been dealing with this because I've worked with several marketers. In 2020, just by the way, I worked with a marketer and it was like the greatest thing since sliced bread. I sat in my dining room and I had more success than probably, I mean, personally, I had more success personally by myself, sitting in my dining room with my laptop, never left my house for an entire year. And in that year, it was unbelievable. I mean, it was just ridiculous how many leads came in. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of leads. I spent very little money, by the way, too, very little money. Oh, yeah. And so what's going on, man, with the world of marketing, and why is this happening? And can we ever get back to that old world in any way, do you think?
Well, I think, yeah. So there's a lot within that question, right? There has been a lot of changes. Honestly, I think they've been a little long overdue. You know, you're only going to continue seeing more and more regulations coming down on whether that's social media platforms, just online in general, the internet in general. You're seeing it happen, not necessarily in America, but you see it in, you know, with the GDPR and all that in Europe. And so, you know, privacy concerns, data management, all that stuff, you know, just continues to become topic of conversation. And the more that happens, the more changes that need to take place. And even back in 2020, before iOS 14 and all of these changes that are probably more known and more public, yeah, it was a whole different world, because they were able to track, the platforms themselves were able to get information and be able to work with other apps or platforms to gather data and understand what people were doing, so that they could show them more relevant ads, right? Like, that's really at the end of the day what they want. They want you to stay on their platforms, and the only way they can do that is to show you stuff you want to see. And
so is it just, is it basically just the regulation? I'm sorry to cut you off, but I mean, is it basically the regulations that stopped the targeting? Because that's what I think that needs to come back in some way. Maybe it'll never come back, but I like being targeted, right? I don't care. Yep. I mean, if I like eating pizza, I want to see ads of pizza, man. I mean, just give me what I want. Like, what's the problem? Like, why did they change that? And what was the issue of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously you had the iOS 14 is the most well-known part of this, which was basically Apple saying, you know, we're going to have people opt into being tracked as opposed to not. And that's whenever a lot of things changed. You saw, you know, targeting and the data that Facebook could actually pull really it hit it hard. And we saw that as well. And, you know, while you can still target people within certain demographics, certain locations, it's still extremely powerful. But you have to think a little bit more about the messaging, the copy, the content. And this was what I've been saying, you know, for years before this started happening. And our team is kind of really, you know, by the time this stuff, the iOS 14 happened and all of that, we had already been talking about this for a couple of years about, you know, regulations at some point are going to happen. They're going to start making it tougher to collect data, share information, all that type stuff. And it's just nature of what it's going to be. And, you know, I think that the marketing, and especially digital and social media management, social media marketing, all of that was kind of the shiny new object. And it gave people opportunities to hop into that space and go out and charge a business down the street $500. I'll run some ads for you. And it was pretty simple. You could put up an ad and the algorithm pretty much did whatever it needed to do in order to get those results. Now it's just not as easy whenever it comes to the algorithm being able to take over. You have to really understand the analytics, the data, you know, how to do proper testing. That's the biggest thing now that you really have to understand, is how do we test more efficiently, so then we can scale without potentially wasting ad spend and all of that. But, you know, I don't know if the targeting and the data, the analytics side is ever going to come back to what it was. But I do think that it presents an opportunity for the people that really have been focused on marketing and advertising a little bit more thoroughly with the right strategy and right execution. I think it allows them an opportunity to really rise to the top. And that's what I always talked about with the team, is that eventually the door will open, and businesses like ours that are committed to growing and being set up for short-term and long-term success by actually building a brand, as opposed to just trying to hack or follow the most recent algorithm tactic or hack, are going to win. And so, it's all about making sure that you're prepared for these things. And yeah, it's probably going to continue to happen. But that doesn't mean that this stuff doesn't work,
Yeah, I mean, I like that because you took a negative and you turned it into a positive. And by the way, it probably got rid of a lot of marketers that were just hacks themselves. Marketers that really they didn't want to spend the time, they didn't want to invest themselves into that brand and create something that was valuable versus just providing with them with a list of names and numbers. So hey, look, man, I'm curious. I always ask this question on my podcast, but I'm just curious, like, how were you raised? Were you raised rich or poor or middle class? And what did your parents do?
Great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. So obviously I don't have prepared answers, but I was raised middle class. By no means was I rich or my parents rich. We were in a good neighborhood, growing up, had a good school system. And so it wasn't, I kind of got the opportunity because of that. And the people I've got to hang out with and be part of on teams growing up, to see a lot of different things and expand my thought, my awareness of the world. And it wasn't, so I had the opportunity to hang out with a lot of different friends all across the state, or really the city of Greenville, South Carolina at that time. And ultimately, we did have a little bit more of a tougher upbringing where, we battled, I say we, more the immediate family, grew up with a lot of depression and anxiety with our parents. And so I got to see that side as well. And that has really opened my eyes up to more of the mental side of things, which I think has helped through my entrepreneurship journey. And as we continue to grow and understand that everything's not going to be handed to you, it's going to be tough. But looking back on the upbringing and kind of going through that was really what has given me the opportunity to know that I can conquer it, handle it, and got to see both my parents do it, and that's been huge. So,
what did your parents do for a living growing up?
Well, my dad he was an electrical engineer, but more on the sales side. So he worked for Siemens, Square D, electrical companies like that. My mom was a nurse as well. So,
I asked the question because I'd like to get to know, like, because obviously you've had some decent success and, you're running an incredible company and you're doing very, very well. And I think sometimes people out there that are, maybe somebody like me, when I first started, I was 21 years old. I was trying to get into business and I had a lot of insecurities. I had a lot of self-doubt and limiting beliefs. And the truth is that I always wanted to, because, you think that everybody's just, they woke up one morning, they had no problems their entire life, and their parents gifted them a great business, and that's how they started, and you don't realize that most of us, we went through shit, most of us had challenges growing up, parents getting divorced and deaths in the family and losing loved ones and, every imaginable thing, having our own depressions and anxieties about everything in life. And we don't realize that, kind of, it's a normal thing. Most people went through shit. Most people. I mean, I've done over 200 podcasts so far. I've interviewed some of the most successful people in the world. And it's crazy. It's a common denominator. Matter of fact, I would say that most people went through shit. It's very rare. It's very rare that people said, man, everything went perfect every step of the way, and it's eye-opening. And it also brings hope to everybody watching and listening that if you start taking the information that you're getting through these podcasts and through the YouTube channel, if you start taking this seriously and mastering your craft and getting great at what you do and loving what you do and knowing that, yes, you suck right now. Yes, you're just getting better. Yes, you're going to have failure. If you just understand that, that's just the steps to get to mastery, to get to where you want to go, then you just expect it. And you're like, okay, I get it. I suck today. Yeah, I tried to do that video like that guy Brandon told me to do, and trying to do this fame thing. And I'm trying to build an audience and trying to be brave. And I suck, man. And I can't even talk on camera. But guess what? A year from now, you're going to be a badass, man. 6 months from now, you're going to be a badass. I don't know. That's just what I believe. What do you think?
Completely agree. To the fact of, I've started, and it's just kind of one of those things where it's just something I always wanted to do. So about a year ago, I just started a small podcast. I mean, and it was all based around failure and succeeding after failure. And it was wanting to, because I don't think enough people talk about that. I think, you look at the billionaires out there and all of that, and you just imagine, you hear and you see what they're doing now, but you don't get the stories that ultimately made or broke them. And most of them, obviously, if they're on a certain level, they made it, right? And I think sharing that yeah, you're going to go through adversity. You're going to most likely feel depression. You're going to have extreme anxiety. In fact, still to this day, 5.5, 6 years in, there's a lot of days where I wake up and I'm like, do I want to continue? And it's tough. But knowing and going through the stuff, and this is one thing that I would say to anybody who's like, well, I've had this, or I've had this setback or whatever, like going through that is why you probably should do something, because you're going to have more of a purpose. You're going to be able to get through it. It's not going to be easy, but that's why you tap in, and we have resources like yourself that they can tap into whenever they need, that we never had 20 years ago. We couldn't hop on a Zoom real quick and sit here and talk through it and say, hey man, I'm going through this, and the other side of it too, that I always just talk about as well, is you hear so many of these stories of people starting a business, or, their entrepreneurial journey started whenever they were broke, or they're in their parents' basement, and they got out. And that's such a common thing. If I went from broke to this, I have a little bit different of a story, that if I go back, and if I were to look back on all the stuff that I've had to go through and how tough it was going to be from time to time along the journey, I don't know if I would have done it the same way I did it. But, I was working with a great company, making well over 6 figures, providing, and after we had our first child and realized that I needed flexibility, I needed freedom, and I just wanted to change the course of my family tree. I wanted, I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder for whatever reason, and still do, but I just wanted to change it, to change the generations that come after me, right? And I quit my job, put in my 30-day notice to start a business whenever I had a lot to lose. The week that I quit, or actually the day that was my last day in my corporate job, found out we were pregnant with our second kid, which was incredible timing, as you can imagine. But it was, it's a little bit different side of the story. And I didn't realize or think about some of the things that were probably going to come with that I was going to have to fight through. But, now I'm thankful. I'm fortunate for a lot of the stuff that I've had to go through, because now I just have a whole different mentality just on life. And I look at things completely differently with a whole different mindset. So yeah, you're spot on with all of that. I don't think anybody can tell you that it's going to be smooth sailing, or that
hey man,
you shouldn't have gone through anything.
It ain't going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. And I'm sitting here after 25 years in business, and I can assure all of you that yes, it sucks a whole bunch of times. Yes, it's hard a whole bunch of times. Yes, there's good days, there's bad days, but man, when you make it, when you build it, when you get financially free, it's worth it. I mean, like I just got back from Slovakia and Vienna and traveling. I love to travel. That's what I do. I almost do that for a living now. I take a vacation every single month somewhere around the world. And I just, but that was my dream, man. That's why I killed it, man. For that first, 7 to 10 years, I killed it from 21 to just call it 28, 29, 30 years old. I mean, I was after it every single day. You couldn't catch me doing anything. No major vacations, no major time off. I mean, I was like, I had those blinders on, like they stick on horses, and I had the blinders on, and nobody could get me off my game. And I didn't care about what you thought about me. I didn't care about what was going on in the business. I didn't care about, good or bad. I just knew the goal. I knew the plan, and I knew what I was supposed to do. And I just did it, and even though I hated it sometimes, even though I was scared sometimes to do the things that I did, I always took more risks. I was very, very coachable. I never stopped. And looking back, man, I mean, it really was life-changing for me. And so, hey, look, I want to get to that fame formula. Can you explain what that really means and what is that?
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. I touched on it a little bit before, but going back and really analyzing, and we've partnered with Billy Gina's marketing, if you're familiar with him, and his team. They're based out of San Diego, California. And I got to know Billy about 5.5 years ago, as I was kind of getting started off. And obviously he's grown his brand globally to what it is today. And we really started thinking, obviously my team has worked with hundreds, if not thousands of businesses in all different industries, markets. And obviously he's worked with thousands as well, and himself. And we've really analyzed, okay, if we take and we really look at what is the common denominator between the ones that had the most success and the ones that didn't. And we really started looking at that side of it. And it comes back, and it regardless of what people want to tell you, as far as like, go out and here's a tactic, here's a hack, here's a strategy, or this is the thing that's going to do it for you this time. We really looked at it, and it comes back to the same thing that has always worked. How we go about doing it now with your phone and the ability to get in front of people a lot faster and a lot more targeted has changed. But the concept, the psychology behind building a brand and building up an audience and building up loyalty is the same as it's always been. And it goes back to just having that omnipresence type approach and continuing to stay in front of the people that matter most to your business. And that means the more often, like I said before, the more places that people see it, the more relevant content that they continue to consume, the more that they see behind the doors and see testimonials, and they see customer stories and how you've changed their life, the more they're going to trust your brand. They're going to have a relationship with you. They are going to feel that you are the answer to what it is they need to solve, what the problems that they need solved. And so we take that kind of concept that has always worked. There's nothing to it. It's just, hey, we're going to go out and we're going to create content that speaks to your audience. We're going to identify who those audiences are, and we are then going to make sure everywhere they go, they continue to see and consume your content. And ultimately, we want them binge watching and consuming it. And the more touch points, the more they just automatically are going to build a relationship between you and your brand. And that's how you become that industry leader. That's how you stop being a secret in your industry, especially to brands that have been doing it without any marketing or advertising, really. If you're looking to grow and scale, you've got to create your own fame formula, and you've got to make sure that you're expanding your message and doing it in a way that continues to build your brand the right way, but builds up that audience, builds up that loyalty, builds up that trust, all while you continue to do what you need to do, whether that's travel, whether that's focus on operations, whether that's, do whatever it is that you're passionate about. And so that's really what it comes down to, is just getting that omnipresence approach and creating content that really builds your brand the way it wants to be, and keep it in front of the right people. And you'll see the changes it's going to make over the first 30, 60, 90, 120 days, and scaling beyond that.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, hey, man, this has been so much fun, Brandon. I really appreciate you coming on with us today. And I want our audience to know where they can find you, because the truth is you could be very valuable to a lot of people watching right now. And again, each person has to take a look at, I don't know your work from anybody else. So, I mean, personally, so I can't 100% say, hey, go talk to this guy. But what I can say is that I would imagine you'll consult with anybody, man. You'll at least take a look and say, hey, let's have a conversation and let's see if you're a fit for them and or if they're a fit for you and vice versa. And so how do they get a hold of you, man? If somebody wants to say, man, I got to get that fame formula. I got to build that omnipresence. I got to get the world to know who I am. I got great information. I'm a freaking stud. I know how to close. I know how to get results, but I just don't have anybody to talk to. Yep. How do we get a hold of you, Brandon?
Well, you can go, obviously, linchpinsales.com. You can find everything on there, but you can also go to stopbeingasecret.com. That's going to give you more about the fame formula and that program, the celebrity branding program that we offer. Obviously, Instagram, Facebook at Linchpin Sales. So YouTube, podcast, you can find us almost anywhere that you want to find us. But yeah, very big on, we want to give you what needs to be done with proper expectations. If you can take that and run with it, then we want nothing more than that. At least worst case that will come from that is goodwill being built. But if we can help you and you need a partner in helping you get it done, then we're here for you. So open to talking with anybody, man. But thank you so much for your time here and having me on. It's been awesome, and I look forward to continuing to follow you and your journey and learning more from you. That I haven't already learned. So,
all right, man.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Brandon. I appreciate it. And just to everybody that's watching, if you guys could do me a huge favor, man, if you could reach out to, I guess, on Instagram at Linchpin Sales.
At Linchpin Sales, yep.
At Linchpin Sales. So they'll reach out to you on Instagram. They're going to send you a message and they're going to say, hey, Brandon, we saw you on Wealth on the Beach podcast on YouTube, or we listened to you on iTunes and Spotify. So they're going to reach out. They're going to say, hey, thank you for all the great content, all the great ideas, all the great information. And so, we really appreciate, diving in and trying to bring a little bit of value to the community that we serve. And we're going to have some fun. So with that said, everybody, make sure that you continue to dream bigger. You got to get after it. You know what I'm talking about. You got to really get after it. But most importantly, do it now. God bless you. We will see all of you at the top.